So I'm just going to kickstart by talking about me. So my name is Beth. I'm head of PR at Ilk Agency, which is an integrated marketing agency based in Leeds. I joined last September and I was tasked with kind of growing the digital PR offering. So I'm going to be chatting all about that today, making changes and growing a department without disruption. So the thought of making changes can be a very scary thing, especially when you're in a new role. So people don't want to talk out of line, they don't want to rock the boat, especially when you are the new person, which is, I think, the worst thing in the world, second to this. Further to that, 66% of change initiatives in business fail, which is according to McKinsey & Company. And a further 18% of employees said they would just straight up leave if a big organisational change occurred, and I'm pretty sure we all know someone who would have said yes to that. But change isn't always a bad thing, and it is something that's necessary in our industry. So this is an industry that's ever changing. There's always new things going on, new campaign types, new updates, new client demands as well. And changing to adapt to that is going to be really important when it comes to growing a department. That's because change helps to ensure that we're being competitive. So by switching things up, whether it's by changing your strategies, implementing new processes, adding in new tools, that's going to help ensure you're staying relevant in an industry that's ever changing, help you compete against other agencies and against other brands as well. And in turn, that can help to attract new business, it can help to attract new staff as well, and that is all key parts of growing a department. And it's also, change can help to improve client and employee retention. So while it's equally as important to kind of get new business, get new staff, retention is such a huge part of growing a department as well. So on the client side of things, no client wants to be presented with the same strategies every single year. No client I've ever worked with has. And on the employee side of things, the main reason why you are going to lose good staff is because they're not learning enough. They feel like they've hit their peak. They just want to go elsewhere and, progress, all of that stuff. So by changing things up, upskilling them, putting that time into them, it can help to improve employee retention as well. So the first part of my talk is going to be about confidence and having the confidence to make change, because ultimately a lack of confidence will impact your ability to make change and to make lasting change. So I know it's not an easy thing, especially if you're not a naturally confident person. It's something I've definitely had to work on. I've been psyching myself about this for months, it seems. But if there's some things that I've understood along the way, this is one that's been really important. And it's that confidence is about asserting yourself in a way that is comfortable for you. So it's not about being difficult or brash or argumentative. You really do not have to be the loudest person in the room if you want to assert yourself confidently. So the more that you can understand that is going to be really important when it comes to having that confidence in yourself and growing a department as well. Also, stay firm when you are challenged. So you are going to be met with a lot of challenge and resistance when making changes. That is just what's going to happen. If you have never done that, cannot relate. But the worst thing that you can do is just back down at the first sign of someone challenging you. So although it's really important to take people's feedback on board, if you genuinely have done that and you still believe that change is the right thing to do, stay firm, have that belief in yourself, and ultimately the more you do that, the more likely it is for other people to have that confidence in you as well. Also, stop apologising for wanting to make changes and use assertive language. So this is all about kind of unlearning things like hope that makes sense to you or if that sounds good to you. All that's going to do is make it out like you're not actually sure of yourself, and it's also like you're asking for people's validation rather than telling them that it's the right thing to do. Again, I know it's not easy. I am someone that puts like an exclamation mark at the end of every single sentence. I'm like sending kisses to my MD on my emails, but the more that you can kind of unlearn that when it matters is going to be really important with asserting yourself in a confident way. And finally, remember that you are the expert. So I know it's so cringy to even say it, but you do really need to have that belief in yourself, that you know what you're talking about, have that trust in your knowledge and your expertise. And then the more that you believe in yourself, the more likely you are to feel confident and for other people to have belief in you as well. And that is a really cringy thing, and I will never say it again, I promise. So as everyone loves a good do and don't, I'm going to be talking about that, about making changes. And the first one is do communicate. So this is something I'm going to be talking about a little bit in depth later on, but communication is absolutely key to change, whether it's with your team, with your clients, with the wider business. You just need to make sure everything is communicated confidently and properly. Don't make changes for the sake of it. So This is something I think a lot of people fall into the trap of, whether they get a promotion or they go into a new role and they think, oh, I just need to make a change now because I'm in this new position. And that's actually one of the worst things that you can do if you do want to minimize disruption. So instead of doing that, just make sure that any change has real thought behind it, has real evidence behind it, that it's going to work for this position that you're in, this team that you're in, this company that you're in. That's going to be really important. Do understand current processes and strategies as well. So if you are to make any thoughtful recommendation for change, you need to understand things 100%. So get under the skin of your internal processes, your client strategies, and then you can make any recommendations for change if they are needed. So really important to understand everything 100%. Don't fixate on what you're used to. So I really wish I could go back in time a year and tell myself this, but understand just because you're used to something, it does not mean that it is the best thing to do. The two do not go hand in hand. So for example, if you've used BuzzStream for the past 3 years, you're going into a new job and you're like, do you know what would be a great tool? BuzzStream. Nothing against it, I like it, it's fine. But just because you're kind of used to it, just understand that it might not be the best thing. So really, again, have that thought behind it, any change that you are trying to make. And do educate others. So this is something, again, I will be chatting about later on, but education plays a really key part in change. Ultimately, people are going to be scared of change because they don't really understand it. So the more work you can put in to educate people, inform them, the better it's going to be. And finally, don't be afraid to make changes. So it can be a very scary thing to kind of put yourself out there and be like, this is what I think we need to do, but just have that confidence in yourself that you do know what you're talking about. Do not be afraid to make changes, and do not be afraid to fail, essentially. So just expanding on a few things that I have just spoken about. As Chris Jenner here says, it is all about communication. So communication is absolutely key to change. You need to communicate with internal teams for sign-off to ensure that everyone's aware of change right from the beginning, because that's going to help minimize disruption later on. So whatever change you are trying to implement needs to kind of go to the powers that be. So whether that's your manager, your MD, the CEO, they need to be completely aware of change right from the beginning, and then it's going to help minimize the disruption later on once they've signed it off. And just a little side note on that as well is to remember, if you put forward a compelling enough case for change, more times than not, people are just going to be like, yeah, go for it, do your thing. So yeah, just again, have that confidence to make those changes. Ensure that all change is clearly communicated to the team and that they feel listened to. So this is something that's so important when you are making change. You do need to understand that it's the team that are going to be doing it every single day, so it cannot just work for you, it needs to work for everyone. So ensure that all change is clearly communicated, that they're right on board with it right from the beginning, and that's going to be really important to minimize disruption later on. So booking training sessions, catch-ups, sit down with them, ask them how it is, annoy them to death about how they're finding the change. As long as they're on board with everything, it's going to help minimize disruption. And this is one that I am particularly passionate about, which is a bit lame for me, but I really don't believe that change can be communicated properly if it's done over email, because I think if that email hits on a particularly busy day, which is every single day in PR, you're more likely to kind of skim through it, file it away, never think of it ever again. So communicate it verbally, so booking meetings, booking catch-ups, booking training sessions with people. It's more likely for change to be implemented successfully if you are doing it verbally, and then of course follow up over email, but that's just my personal preference. And finally, get feedback and listen to it. So this is a lot of things that people often forget to do. They'll implement change and here we are, this brand new process, and never ask anyone how it's working for them. So get feedback from the team, get feedback from clients as well on how it's working for them, and adapt and pivot if needs be. And then just onto education. Not sure if anyone in the room is a Real Housewives fan, or it's just me, but I love Candice, so had to include her. You really need to educate on the value of what you are trying to change. So as I mentioned before, the more time, the main, goodness me, can't speak today. The main reason why people will be scared of change is because they don't understand it. Maybe they've never done it before, maybe they don't think they need to, and fair play to them. But if you are trying to make change happen, you need to really educate on the value of it to them. So put that time in, send training resources around, sit down with them, invite them along to webinars, whatever that might be, because ultimately the more people understand, the easier it's going to be for them to adapt. And also educate on industry changes. So I don't know if everyone in here agrees with me, I really hope so, but I think PR is getting harder. I've been in this industry for many years now, and I think it's harder to get followed links. I think it's harder to even get coverage to cut through the noise. Clients reducing budgets, that's making it hard to do these really creative campaigns that are going to add a lot of value. So if you are adapting things because of that, then educate on the reason why. So it might not be the easiest conversation to have. I'm sure no one's gone to a client and be like, hey, we're going to reduce your link target. And they're like, cool, go ahead. But in my experience, the more that you can actually educate on the reasons why, the more likely they are to be like, okay, yeah, we understand it, and adapt. So whenever relevant, educate on industry changes as well. And then just onto a couple of reminders. The first is to make yourself available to answer any questions or concerns. So if you are the person that is implementing change, you need to be that support system for people whenever they have questions or concerns about it. So it's really important that any team feels completely supported throughout the process of change. If not, they're going to be, really disrupted. They might even leave, So yeah, just make yourself available to answer questions or concerns. It's going to be key. Ensure that you're setting in an example. So change comes from the top. So if you are kind of implementing change, you need to be putting in that hard work and showing your team exactly what it is that they should be doing. And then it's more likely for them to be on board from it to see what they should be doing. So really important to lead by example. And finally, never preach to your team. This was something I was really conscious of doing or not doing when I started, because I was coming into an agency that had a bit more of a traditional background, and my background is completely digital. So I didn't want to come in and be like, oh, everything you've been doing before is rubbish and I know everything, because first of all, not true, and second of all, that would be the worst thing. I'm sure if you ever got a manager that did that, you'd be like, how do we get this person out? So instead of doing that, which I really hope nobody would, position change as an opportunity for learning instead. So show people how it's going to benefit them, show them why it's a good thing, and that's more likely for them to be on board from it right from the start as well. And then the final part of my talk is going to be about upskilling a team, because I really believe in order to kind of grow a department, you need to nurture that existing talent that you already have in the team. And upskilling is something that's so important. So according to LinkedIn, 93% of millennial and Gen Z employees expect their employers to provide learning opportunities to them, which is obviously pretty huge. And upskilling significantly improves employee retention and productivity as well. So as I spoke about right at the beginning of my talk, the main reason you are going to lose good staff is because they feel like they're not learning enough. They're like, well, what are you offering me anymore? So the more time that you can put in to upskill them, the better it's going to be. It can help improve retention. It can also help ensure they're more productive and happy at work, which is ultimately the goal of any manager. So how do you do this? And yes, I did just include this slide so I can include this GIF because it is my favorite one. So I'll just go through quickly what I did when I first started ILK, and I determined skills gaps and then ran some surveys, internal training with the team as well. So what I did was I pulled together a Microsoft form, or use Google or whatever form you want to use, and I just kind of pulled together everything needed for PR, so the basics, the bread and butter stuff, your press releases, your media list, your client communication, to more like digital focused things, understanding different link types, the link between PR, SEO, all of that stuff, and just ask the team what it was that they felt they wanted more training on. And just a note to keep responses anonymous as well, because people are more likely to be truthful if their name isn't attached to it, especially with a new manager as well. And then I set up training on the top priorities, so I just pulled together Google slide presentations, and I just ran internal training sessions with the team, sat down with them, shared knowledge. It was a really nice way of kind of going through everything one-on-one. And these are really good presentations as well that can be used as a continual resource. So whenever people are kind of unsure of something, they can just always flick back to these presentations. It's a really good tool for new starters as well, that all of that training's there. And just a note to refresh the training as well. So obviously in an industry that's ever changing with always new things going on, something that was relevant even like 6 months ago might not be completely relevant now. So make sure that you are continually refreshing the training. And then just quickly onto some other ways of determining skills gaps. The first one's not exactly groundbreaking, but just talk to people directly. So if you do have a really good relationship with your team, chat to them, chat to managers or strategists or whatever they're called to kind of see what the execs need. And then you can set up training on that, whether internal or external. And also employee objectives are a really good way of seeing like any consistent areas of improvement needed in a team. So look at, PDP plans, objectives, whatever it is. And if there's one thing that's consistently cropping up time and time again, that can signal to you that that's an area of development needed, and then you can obviously set up that training on that. So on to a final word, just summarizing everything I have spoken about. So growing a department starts with nurturing the existing talent in your team. That's really important. The more you can educate on the value of what you're trying to achieve, the better. Work with the team, the wider company, and clients to ensure that change works for them. Effective communication and listening is vital when trying to implement change. Remember that you are the expert, so don't bow down if you believe that change is the right thing to do. And finally, I'm not going to do it in Ross's voice, but just imagine it. Pivot if it doesn't work. There's no shame in kind of doing something and it not working and adapting if needs be. Thank you so much.